Hey everybody, how's it going? Nice day, right? Beautiful day, beautiful day. Actually, kind of a cloudy day here in Casco Bay. Anywho, yeah, here we are. So Doug, the man, Pinecreek, the man who said, I don't want to. Maybe I should not talk about this any longer. Maybe I should just drop it all. Geez, blah 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 blah. Decided he'd go live and hear Matt Dillahunty a new one or some kind of thing. I guess he was honored, or maybe he's just riding the wave, riding that wave without really examining some of the more complicated issues that he likes to pretend he cares about. So I saw a thing. I saw a thing. And so I went on to a thing and tried to actually engage him on the topics he pretends to know everything about and care about, and maybe shed some light rather than heat into the argument. One of the folks in the chat, I like to get casual on these things. I mean, I am really not the kind of person who is real careful about, gussying up. I'm too old for that shit. I'm an old man woman. I like to get comfortable. I like to stretch out a little bit, and sort of sit like this. And one of his chatters said, she should put the leg down and sit like a real woman. At least she said she, I suppose. But this just it made me laugh. It made me laugh a little bit because in so many of these discussions, it's like people just are talking stuff and yet are falling into all sorts of stereotypes. And so the discussion later on got into women who don't fit the mold and all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, holy fuck, really? So anyway, I thought I'd just go online, maybe talk about it. I might open it up for any of you folks want to come in and chat. But here's Dougie. Let's go. Sure. Always. I'm that much of an egotist.
It just helps at communication if you can show your face.
Yeah. I've got my camera running.
Okay.
Oh, I don't have my camera running. Hold on.
No problem. I'll read the live stream chat while you figure that out.
Yeah, we had technical issues, Again, not always ready. Let me go out and come back.
Okay.
Yep. So anyway, Doug.
This has been a very interesting live stream.
Apparently, Doug.
You just heard from the Home Office. This is the most popular live stream on the Pinecreek Political Channel. Wow.
That right there is why Doogie don't want to stop talking about it. Wow. He's getting the revenue, getting the clicks, getting the likes. By the way, everybody's watching this freaking thing. Please do me a favor. Like, subscribe, share. Help me get a little bit going here. I think I got what's 100 it's 140. I don't know what am I? Where am I? Back. where am I? 142 of you people seem to have subscribed. I got 142 subscribers, like almost 4,000 views. So yeah, this little thing's growing a little bit, and that makes me a little happy. It's nice to know your voice is heard. And really, to be honest, I that's why I'll go and engage a guy like Doug. Um, because so many, so many of these conversations wind up being two usually cis het white guys sitting talking about trans women, and they never really talk about guys like my friend Beck, my friend Ben. They don't talk about uh, trans men at all. Um, and it's just kind of one of those oddities. Anyway, let's go with Duggo. I'm keeping him waiting.
They polled nationally, #1 ranked
Yeah,
on
about
the
that.
issue of trans. Really?
Yeah. As if you didn't know.
There
Come
we
on,
go.
man. Come on, man.
Now we see you.
Phone in from the moon.
So, where do you want to start? What did you think of that video I made?
I didn't watch it.
Oh, you didn't watch it. What did you watch this live stream from the beginning?
I just dropped in. I was kind of surprised because I think the last content I saw of yours, you were saying, maybe I'll stop talking about this stuff.
Yeah, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Mm-hmm.
And
No.
then
The
too.
views pull you
No,
back
but if
in,
you
Doug.
go back the
Don't
last
give me
couple
that
weeks,
bullshit.
every
We
time
all
I
know
talk
what's
about
going on
trans
here.
Stuff with people, they've always brought it up first, not me. I double checked. I'm right about that. So, but anyhow, that video, you probably watched some of it because if you watch this live stream, I replayed that video.
Yeah.
And what do you think about my comparison to the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit? Because we can't really falsify that, can we?
No, we can't you can't falsify the existence of the Holy Spirit. You can carry a fair amount of doubt, and I think that, perhaps it's analogous in that sense.
Okay. So you would agree with my analogy that you can't, if someone says, and I know you don't say this, I don't think you say this, but some trans.
You see, here is Doug, who really does not know anything about the topic substantially. I mean, he knows what Matt Walsh said. He knows what's popular on the interwebs. He knows the resources to point at that say that hold that the whole notion of transgender is an ideology of some nature, without doing a great deal of interaction with actual trans people, or of reviewing the literature, the medical literature that is well founded. The research goes back to the 20s, before the Nazis got a hold of it and burned it up, and then arrested the people that were patients at the Center for Sexual Research in Berlin, and Magnus Hirschfeld and all that, all of that stuff. What happened in real history? He doesn't know anything about it, but, it's the topic du jour. And what he's trying to do here with his Holy Spirit argument about how it's an ineffable feeling and blah, 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 is to link his area of expertise, arguing about religion, to equating transgender people as acolytes to transgenderism, which A, doesn't exist, And B is something you can make up. It's the perfect straw man. So what he's trying to do is take an area that he really has very little actual knowledge of and analogize it to an area where he's made his bones in the past. Richard Dawkins did the exact same thing in some interviews I've seen him do. It's like uh, he kind of almost made the exact same point. So, which is probably where Doug got a hold of this particular tip. Um, he in Dawkins' case, he was comparing the doctrine of transubstantiation to being a transgender person. In that, the nature of the wine is changed in Catholic doctrine to be the blood of Christ in its nature. And and trans people become the other sex in their nature through the intervention of all this stuff. And the point is that really, for trans people, I think it's more like we feel our nature or we discover it or something along those lines. I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a sailmaker. I don't know how to talk about these things properly. I can only speak from my own experience, uh, and that's the case for as far as I know, almost all trans people that I've spoken to. We all get here different ways. There's no particular roadmap to dealing with our nature. Uh, and since it's not a struggle for most people, since it's not uh, since there's not a conflict between that internal feeling and external features, facts, the internal fact is dismissed, as is the case in most areas of perception. How does a shrink know you're depressed? You tell him. Does the shrink say you're full of shit, or does the shrink go, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's going on internally for you, and try to talk through. Perhaps find medical treatments that work, that address that aspect of things. Much like, let's talk this through. Let's talk through your feeling and your and all of the consequences and all of the things that surround that. And let's find some possible solutions. Maybe it's think it over again. Maybe it's um, maybe it's gender affirming care of some nature, or just having somebody to talk through the issues to address them, eliminate confusions, and come to some sort of determination and try to find a way to make you more comfortable in your skin and walk more comfortably in life. So no, Doug, I don't buy your Holy Spirit thing. And since we sort of go on with that, see, I just said a bunch of stuff because it's the way it goes. But roll the
Most
Dougie.
people say, I am, let's say, a man trapped in a woman's body. You
I
can't
don't like
falsify.
that. I don't like that formulation very much because I don't think it really, I think that this issue is covered in a lot of nuance.
Yeah, I understand that you don't say that.
Even when you get down to some of the nuts and bolts issues that you are most concerned about in the discourse.
But can we?
There's a lot of nuance in there. So I'm not. I don't like that formulation for myself because it doesn't really adequately describe uh, the way I have dealt with the issue for my entire life.
I
And it
understand, but would
doesn't
you say
really
that
describe
that
things.
your being trans is falsifiable?
Well, I don't know what you would do. Would you care to lop off my breasts and give me a penis again?
No, like if someone like yourself makes the claim, I am trans, I'm a trans woman, does the phrase falsifiability even come into play? Does it make sense? Like, can you empirically show me that you are a trans woman?
Oh no, I can tell you. I mean, I can
Besides
show you.
declaration.
I can show you my medical records. I suppose I could go through all of that stuff.
What in your medical
But
records
when
would
it comes
show?
to human beings, though, Doug, how does that matter really?
No,
I
but
mean,
we
I
can
am what I am, and that's all that I am. I
right.
ain't
We can
Popeye the
say,
Sailor Man, so what do you want?
Stephanie, we can say
What do
it
you want
doesn't
from me?
matter, but the question still remains because this is the analogy I was making for the intertestimony of the Holy Spirit, that if you claim you're a trans woman, and even if you don't transition, you can still be a trans woman, right? So how
Yes.
could someone outside of you verify that?
In my case, again, I could show you medical records. I could put you in touch with the 3 psychology people I worked with, for 2 being psychiatrists and 1 being
Okay, how did the
a
psychiatrist know you were a
practitioner
trans woman?
by talking to me. How does a psychiatrist know that you're depressed?
Right. So this is my point. My point is there's no
Yeah, your
way
point is worthless
to
then, because
verify
it's not
that
the
someone's
same.
trans other than
What a
self-declaration.
ridiculous point. But isn't that the case in a great deal
Yes.
of
Yeah.
human experience? How can
Yes.
anyone
Same with
verify
homosexuality.
anything?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, but I'm just making that point because that's the point.
Pardon me. Are you homosexual? What? Doug, come on.
That I was making in that video about the intertestamental of the Holy Spirit. We can say that the experience is real in the case of the intertestamental of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, but the Holy Spirit won't give you a blowjob, Doug. I mean, come on.
But the attribution might be false. It might be true. Like there could be a God that's actually giving people this religious experience. In the same way, there is your experience, whatever it may be, that leads you to say that you're a trans woman.
Y'all can watch the whole fucking thing at some point. It's a long stream, as you see.
Just like the intertestamental.
I wasn't in there the whole time. I just sort of saw this thing, and fine, but I don't think the experiences are quite comparable because the intertestament of the Holy Spirit isn't going to, may affect that one person. Doesn't really affect. I hate to get down this road. The religion, being trans is not a religion. It's not a belief, and it's not a false belief. It's a deeply felt inward feeling, and
a deeply felt
in that sense, maybe they're analogous. But
kind of fucked up there, I'll admit.
I don't see living a life in devotion to Christ as the same as living a life as a
well, hang on,
walking the world.
Aren't you living your life as a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very analogous to a Christian saying they're living their life as a Christian.
Except that one is a condition of physicality and another is not.
Okay, if it's a condition of physicality, we should be able to verify it, right?
Would you like me to undress, Doug?
No. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at that we can, if it's physical,
I mean,
then everything we just talked about is false.
What the hell? How are you supposed
because
to
I asked,
think
can it be
that? Can you
falsified? Can we verify
demonstrate
it? If it's purely physical,
what would convince you, Doug? What on God's green earth is going to convince you? There's, yeah. I mean, I honestly don't, what it boils down to is a point of view that I think Doug holds, but I have never asked him directly. I really ought to at some point. Do you think that the condition of being transgender is a form of mental illness that needs a cure? Not the dysphoria, but do you think that the entire cluster that sometimes includes profound dysphoria is a condition that needs a cure? And I would also submit that dysphoria is a condition that can be cured by more closely aligning one's physiognomy, one's phenotype to one's internal feeling before we even get to genotypes. And the insistence over and over and over again. I did a video about on Dawkins, where Dawkins is so insistent on there being two sexes, period. In most cases, Dawkins, as a scientist, would say that if you can falsify that statement, then it's not true. I mean, let's talk about karyotypes. You've got XX, generally leads to that karyotype generally leads to a female phenotype. XY leads to a male phenotype. XXX, generally female. XXY, sometimes ambiguousness in secondary sex characteristics, usually testes, sometimes ovaries, sometimes both. Let's see where we go. It's XY, XX, XXX, XXY, and XO, which is to say there isn't a second chromosome in that pair. And that leads results all over the place. Some people are assigned male at birth and some people are assigned female at birth because of their externalities. Usually those people do not produce gametes. And so also let's talk about gametes. If gametes is the sole indicator, a body, I've heard it put by some people, a body that is generally aligned towards the production of small gametes or large gametes, male, female. But some people don't have that capacity, so there's another point of falsifiability. I have always said, and the young man I featured in that last video covers it beautifully. It's a sex itself is a cluster of characteristics that we categorize as being masculine or feminine, because there is a distinction in our minds culturally and visibly, which is why phenotype is important, of what constitutes male and female.
Yes, pragmatic. If you do ask them, there are a fair number of people involved here, about the same percentage of the population that has red hair. So, unfortunately, if you have red hair and you want to have a soul, you can dye it blonde. Is that how it works? I forget. Anyway,
Physical.
it seems to me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it seems to me that many people would like to falsify it on the basis of certain biological characteristics.
No,
Sometimes it comes down to chromosomes. Sometimes it comes down to gametes. And when you're talking about, it's very difficult to categorize people adequately based on one specific characteristic that is associated with, that is predictive of gender. Let's put it that way. I want to quote briefly from a personal account of a woman. This ties into your concern with athletics. And all right, so this person is intersex, but just briefly, one's name is Maria Jose Martinez Patino. She's a doctor now. She published this in 2005, speaking of her experience in the 80s. She was born and raised in northern Spain, lived the life of a normal girl, except that she enjoyed track, affinity for running and jumping, excelled in athletics, competed at the national level, but only because of concentrated effort and training, and was on the 1983 World Track and Field Championships in Helsinki, where at the age of 22, she passed her first sex test. Now, let me give you a little background as to what sex tests were in world athletics at that time. Well, because of experience.
Did you notice that Doug just said, why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about this? Because that's one of your fundamental questions, Doug. That's one of the top items on your agenda. You want to talk about trans women in athletics, and you want to talk about gender affirming medical care, medical treatment being given to children under the age of 18. Those are the two things that you say are very, very important to you. So I'm talking about it in order to address one of those issues. I could address the other one, having been a trans girl under the age of 18 that would have done anything but difficult to do that kind of thing in the 60s, mate. We've come a long way in terms of techniques, medical treatments available, a whole bunch of stuff. These folks tend to think that it's simply a question of waking up one day saying, "Hey, I feel like," and suddenly being, and it doesn't work that way. It never does. It takes an awful lot of careful evaluation, careful listening, etc., and so forth, to get through any form of addressing who you are and how you'd like to be. And the problem I have is, like, here's Doug. If it's not going to affect him in any way, if somebody else's child, or if somebody, or somebody, he doesn't know my sailing career. If somebody wants to play sports on him, go sailing with a women's team, invited, asked, how does that affect Doug in any way? How does it affect Matt Walsh in any way? How does it affect people sitting in state legislatures in any fucking way? When the people that are dealing with this are medical professionals that have dealt with this issue for years and years and years, or they are sporting federations who have dealt with this issue for years and years and years, it's like, why are we talking about this? Because that's what you say concerns you. But it doesn't really.
experience because it ties into your use of a marker XY chromosomes as being being determinative in some way. So this woman competes as a woman, raises a girl, competes as a woman. She has AIS. She passed the.
She was raised as a. Hang on, you said she was raised as a girl or a boy?
As a girl.
Okay, and
she was born as a girl. She achieved, and this is why I wanted to tell you what how it was determined in world sport in 1983. What one did was one did in fact take one's clothes off and palpitate one's sex organs in front of a panel of people, and then they gave you a card, a certificate of femininity.
Okay.
All right. So so she has androgen insensitivity syndrome. The SRY gene didn't turn on the Y chromosome. Was phenotypically female, karyotypically male.
Yep.
Engaged in sporting competition. Yeah. All right. So what you're seeing on screen now is an article that Maria published in the Lancet in 2005, and there's her certificate of femininity. Now let me tell you exactly how the certificate of femininity. For those of you who are not aware, I am a trans woman in sport. I am registered with World Sailing as a female athlete. I have provided documentation as to my hormone levels to my world governing body, which that particular thing was introduced in 2004. Prior to 2004, actually, it's kind of, there was this strange interlude between 2000 when they stopped karyotype testing, and 2004 when they set the levels of hormones and stuff. But prior, when 1985, when this incident happened, 1983, right? She goes and plays in the competes in the 1983 World Track and Field Championships in Helsinki. In those days, the sex test she refers to here consisted of stripping, and this was only done for females, taking all your clothes off, bending over, palpitating your genital area to show the panel of mostly men that you had all the bits. That's how she got her certificate of femininity. World Athletics determined that maybe that's a little bit invasive. Maybe there's other ways of doing it. Oh, I know. Let's do karyotype testing. They stopped that in 19. Did they stop that? They stopped that in. In 1990, I think. It was 1990. And they went to karyotype testing. So anyway, Maria goes, competes, gets a certificate of femininity. In 1985, you can read this. I put links to all this crap in the chat, or rather in the data for the video. So in 1985, she goes to Kobe, Japan, and forgot to bring the note from the doctor. It said, she's a chick. So by that time, they were doing karyotype testing. They weren't doing this strip buck naked and deal yourself thing. So she forgets her certificate. So they say, okay, well, we're going to just double check. we're going to take a buccal smear. They're going to take a swab it on your cheek and look at your chromosomes. I just read this paragraph. In 1985, I went to the World University Games in Kobe, Japan. Unfortunately, I forgot my certificate, and my buccal smear test for 2 X chromosomes had to be repeated. Later that day, our team doctor told me in front of the teammates I sat with on the night before my race that there was a problem with my result. At the hospital the next day, I learned that a sophisticated, science always improving, a sophisticated karyotype analysis would be undertaken, and that the results would take months to reach my sports federation in Spain. See, the way sports is organized, you have a world governing body, and then you have national federations. That's the way it works in all Olympic sports. Our team doctor advised me to consult with a specialist when I got home and urged me in the meantime to fake an injury so that no one would suspect something untoward. You see how the social stuff comes into this? This is a person assigned female at birth, raised as a girl, no hormonal issues, is 100% phenotypically female, and yet she's humiliated because of some arbitrary definition. Fake an injury. I was shocked, but I did as I was told. I sat in the stands that day watching my teammates, wondering how my body differed from theirs. I spent the rest of the week in my room feeling a sadness that I could not share. My mind spun. Did I have AIDS or leukemia, the disease that killed my brother? I'm trying to make this personal here. This is what folks tend to forget. We're talking about real people. As I was about to enter the January 1986 National Championships, I was shown to feign an injury, to withdraw from the racing quietly, graciously, and permanently. I refused. When I crossed the line first in the 60-meter hurdles, my story was leaked to the press. I was expelled from our athletes' residence. My sports scholarship was revoked, and my running times were erased from my country's athletics records. I felt ashamed and embarrassed. I lost friends, my fiance, hope, energy. But I knew that I was a woman and that my genetic difference gave me no unfair physical advantage. I could hardly pretend to be a man. I have breasts and a vagina. I never cheated. I fought my disqualification. She fought and won. They all encouraged me in my endeavor to change the regulations and the mindset of sports administrators about perceived advantage in women with congenital differences. And we are not talking about trans people here. We're talking about people with some degree of an intersex condition. And I'm not trying to use her story to be 100% analogous. But what is 100% analogous is the identification of a difference in sexual development as a marker for sex and as a marker for gender. And when that marker is used as evidence to determine this person is male, this person is female, assuming by the gender category, male and female, that the person designated male has an automatic advantage. That Y chromosome, even though the individual
who has XY chromosomes did not have the gene on the Y chromosome, the SRY gene, kick in, whether it was because of in utero hormonal conditions or this, that, or, whatever, for whatever reason, this person developed with a typical phenotype without any advantage that or perceived advantage. And in a lot of cases, perhaps it is a perceived advantage that testosterone confers. She never had a male puberty. She did have a female puberty. So here's an exception that proves the rule. It's just, let's go back to Dougie.
I mean, she wasn't a world champion or anything. She was engaged in athletics with XY chromosomes.
Well, since you're bringing up the sports issue, can we talk about that?
She won one race, so I guess she was best at that day.
Why do you think women's sports exist? As opposed to no,
exist because of the lack of opportunity for women to excel in athletics, the underfunding of for cultural reasons that women weren't expected to excel in athletics, and a lot of women enjoy athletics, and as a result of many factors, some of them physical, some of them social, etc., and so forth, they haven't been given enough opportunity to excel in athletics, which is something they enjoy, which the International Olympic Committee and the Olympic Charter says in Principle 4 of the Olympic Charter that sport is a human right, and they're humans, and they have a right to participate. That's why I believe.
But my question is, like,
women's categories were created, and I can go deeper and basically say sometimes women's categories were created for political reasons. In that, for example, in skeet shooting, a Chinese woman in 1990 in Barcelona won the world championship in that category. It was not a gendered category at the time. And 4 years later, that was in Barcelona. 4 years later in Atlanta, there was suddenly a women's category.
So you're saying women's sports exist because there wasn't opportunity for women to do sports in the past?
Yeah, it's a historical underfunding of women's athletics. That's why we have Title IX in the United States.
Okay, so but why not just let women compete against men and encourage them to do sports and compete against men?
And sometimes they do. In my sport of sailing, there are often.
But you said sometimes they do, but why not all the time? Why not all the time?
Do you think that there's a gender test to play in the NBA?
There isn't.
That's right.
Yeah, women can. So why aren't women playing in the NBA?
They're generally not tall enough. They're they're any number.
By the way, your camera's fuzzy.
Because yeah, I know. I just
put your hand right in front of the camera and pull it back.
No, I've got my own solutions for this problem.
Okay.
That doesn't always work.
What I'm hearing you get at is the reason why women are not playing in the NBA is because of physicality differences.
Well, there were exclusions in the past, but there aren't at this point. You got to qualify,
Right. Okay. So women don't play in the NBA because they don't qualify, even though there's no gender test. Why don't they qualify?
I don't know. Brittany Griner saw more opportunity in the women's league. It's also more fun playing with your friends.
It's more fun to play with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they'd qualify if they had friends? If, let's say, a woman had friends?
It's a human activity. That's the point, Doug.
Like male friends? Then they would.
If the culture were more accepting, I imagine that there would be less of a, historically more accepting. And then when the opportunity arose to
let me tell you. Let me ask you.
Which is exactly what happened in sailing. Sailing is a really good old boy sport, always has been historically, aside from and on top of the general cultural predisposition to view women as not being as competitive and not being as keen on competing and not being this, that, and the other thing. And I remember pre-transition sailing with this guy, and it was at a district championship, and the top two finishers were women, right? And one of our competitors walked over and said, "Oh, don't feel too bad. They're not real women." This is a thing, you see. It's a thing. It's a mental thing that people have. You wonder why there aren't more women in sport. It's because you're not expected to be there. And worse yet, if you beat a guy, you're not real. It's not because of your training. It's not because of your talent. It's not because of your smarts. It's not because of anything other than the fact that you can't be real, because I can't stand the idea of being beat by a chick. You had to look at her stern the entire time. And you lost. Goes back to what I was talking about. It's like, okay, women gold medals in Barcelona. Well, we got to have a women's category now, because we can't have the poor guy didn't have a chance. It's like, it's the same fucking, it is past 5 minutes in, and I usually swear in the first 5 minutes anyway. I'll never be monetized. But anyway, I'm a sailor. But like, she won gold. Some poor guy came in second. So what do? We put her in the women's division in the next quadrennium. Well, we'll just have a women's competition so that the guys can get their little medal. It works both ways here, folks. It's just, it does. It's just crazy.
If you agree with this, the typical man can jump higher than the typical woman.
Yes, the atypical woman might be able to beat out the typical man too.
The typical man is faster than the typical woman.
Yes, we're talking about typical, but when we're talking about elite athletics, we're not talking about typical.
You're right. And a elite professional man is typically better, faster, stronger than the elite typical professional woman. True or false?
True.
Yeah.
The elite typical man doesn't undergo hormone treatment or sex change operations or anything like that.
Do you think this is the reason why women's sports exist? Because of what we just talked about right now?
Well, I can tell you for sure, Doug, it's not because trans people exist or have played in or competed in women's events. Because I can also tell you that since 2002, when, first of all, the reason I started talking about Maria's story is because karyotype testing was abandoned in 2000 by World Athletics and by the Olympic Games, because they were trapping a number of people whose karyotypes were not strict XY, and they realized that accomplished women who had put in the time and the training and did not have elevated testosterone levels and did not have any of the complications, or that when you start to answer that question, what is a woman? And again, as somebody pointed out earlier, it's always the women, it's never the guys.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
What's the reason for that?
What we just talked about. You yourself admitted
that men typically are stronger than women.
Yep, faster.
Are trans women typically stronger than cis women?
If you're comparing apples to apples, I would say yes.
You would say yes. Can you prove it?
Can you prove otherwise? See, this is where it becomes like a religious conversation. If
well,
you
are you familiar with the U.S. Air Force study of typical men, typical women?
No, I'm not.
And their physical abilities. Are you familiar with that study?
No, I'm not. But Stephanie, here's the difference.
The United States Air Force conducted the study. And
I'll let you talk for 5 minutes, but no more.
What they did. Well, you're interested in the topic, and I'm giving you some research. Okay, what they did was they compared men to trans men, women to trans women, over the course of 5 years.
Okay.
Of annual physical, the athletic evaluation, physical evaluation. They found that after 2 years of hormone HRT, hormone replacement therapy, trans men and cis men had almost precisely the same levels of physical fitness as one to the other. After 2 years of HRT, trans men and cis men had within measurable degrees the same level.
Did the cis men take hormones? No, right?
No.
Okay, so you're saying that you have a study that says
that
when women take certain hormones, probably testosterone, there's no significant difference between them and women.
When trans men take gender-affirming hormone therapy, after 2 years, based on the physical fitness evaluation test that
there was no
every member of the Air Force undergoes every year. It's an annual test of physical fitness.
Yeah, after this,
measures upper body strength,
I understand. Show me
lower body strength.
after this live stream. Can you email that to me?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, don't worry about it right now. But after the live stream, I'd be curious to take a look at that. But let me ask you just like some very simple
I
questions
actually put it in
You
his
don't want to hear. You
comments.
don't want to hear about the women, do you?
about the
Women, about trans women and cis women. After 2 years, trans women had a residual, on average, performed better at in tests of lower body strength and things like running.
Okay.
But otherwise, except in every other measure, trans women had the same level of athletic, not athletic ability. What am I saying? Physical fitness.
Okay, so yeah, you can send.
And again, these aren't. We're not talking about the number of studies of elite athletes is few and far between.
Okay, yeah, these are not
And
elite athletes.
one of the best, if you're really interested in getting a bird's eye view and an overview over time of literature from 2011 to 2021, I'd suggest you look into the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, which published a study last January reviewing all of the literature. And CCES,
Like Stephanie, I don't want to be rude, but you do have this habit of talking a lot.
He didn't like what he was hearing, did he? Not much. He didn't really like it. You know, I mean, come on.
well, I don't know if you've ever talked to someone who is actually
Trans?
A, trans, and B,
You've seen me talk to a
a
lot of trans
professional athlete.
people. Okay, let me ask you about this.
There aren't many of us, Doug.
Leah Thomas is a great example, right, of someone who basically was a professional, not a professional, a competitive athlete.
I knew
An elite
come
athlete,
up.
Yeah, okay, sure, an elite competitive
competing
athlete,
at the elite level, at a high level in sport.
elite competitive high level of sport, who basically sucked as a man.
No, she didn't.
No, okay, like 400 or 500th ranked in the United States in college level, and then Leah did go through some type of.
Yeah, the NCAA, the rule in the NCAA at the time was that you needed to be on, you needed to have been, you needed to, A, your testosterone level had to be below 5 nanomoles per liter,
Right.
and B, you had to have been, and you, oh, by the way, but for a period of 2 years, you needed to keep your T level below 5 nanomoles per liter.
Now, doesn't this speak
2 years.
volumes? Because Leah Thomas basically had testosterone sucked out of her for 2 years, and still dominated.
That's not how it works.
Okay, you're right. Does not how it works. Forgive my language.
You know, I'm sorry, Doug. I mean, part of the reason I talk is, you know, you have in a lot of these
But
conversations.
Steph, you got to give me some grace and charity. You know what I mean by what I'm
tendency
saying.
to use sensation.
Give me charity. Or
Okay,
give me
I will
death.
actually. I'll be honest. I'm going to try not to use sensational language. But do you agree factually that Leah Thomas went from like 400, 500 ranked as in the men's category to basically winning competitions? I don't know if she was ever ranked first, but rankings doesn't like.
Well, she did win the 500 meter.
Even
freestyle.
after going through 2 years, whatever you want to call it, doesn't that tell you something?
It's not whatever
What
I
does it
want
tell
to
you?
call it. It's fucking studied.
It tells me that someone who is committed to a training regimen and sticks with it and is highly competitive and competitive enough to wish to participate in
Okay,
in
very good.
sports at the athletic. But do you mention the trans guy competing for Yale in the same year who was winning medals all over the place?
Yeah. Oh, who's that?
His name is Isaac, I think, and I can't remember his last name. Yale University.
You can send that to me as well. I'm very curious to see that. But my point is this, Stephanie. I asked you a question. What explains Leah Thomas going from 4 to 500, going through 2 years of however you want to phrase it, to winning as a woman? You said commitment to training in the regimen. So are you saying that over that 2 years, she just trained more, got better, and that's the reason why she won?
Have you looked at her times versus as competing as a female vis-a-vis when she was competing in the men's division?
Yeah, it improved, right? It didn't improve?
Way down.
No, when you say way down, you mean
Her personal times
got worse.
got worse.
Okay, listen to yourself, Stephanie. You're admitting.
Are you also no? Wait, are you also? Did you also miss the news that one of her former teammates broke her 500 meter freestyle this February by 5 seconds?
Okay. What did Leah Thompson win in? Was it freestyle?
500 meter freestyle
Leah
at
Thomas.
the NCAA championships.
Okay, so Leah Thomas
He doesn't
won
know what he's
and then lost
talking
to a
about,
woman
but
later,
he
which is-
makes this
Well, she
fucking
lost plenty.
point
She didn't win everything.
over
She
and
did win
over
that
and
competition.
over
But let me ask you
again.
this. I want you.
And
I
it's
want
just
to answer.
some of the people
from
that
the
that
garbage
were,
that he's seen
perturbed by
on the
her
news.
performance also beat her in other
You
meets.
care about
Let me
the
ask you this.
issue?
It's not like
Don't do the
it's
work.
not like she changed divisions without any
Jesus.
intervention whatsoever,
Fuck
kept the
that.
same times, and then was beating everybody. That's not what happened.
If Leah Thomas were to transition back or say she's a man, like she was, and go back into men's sports,
You get
you-
crushed.
she would get crushed.
If she kept the same testosterone.
At least he
No,
has
no,
a good
no, no,
reason.
and then
At least
took 2 years to
she
get
was.
testosterone levels back to where they were. What would you predict her rank would be?
She might get back to where she was. I mean, she would have to train, obviously.
Which would be
because-
400, 500 ranked.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. See, this is where why I'm
But
against-
you see that you have to acknowledge that her personal performance dropped substantially. Her times were substantially different,
you have to get
After-
rid of the testosterone in order to be equal to women. I understand that.
which means you lose upper body strength, which means you lose a great deal of
Which means men naturally have
which means
more
you
upper
lose
body
which
strength.
means you lose a great deal of strength overall, which means you lose.
This
which
is
means back
almost my
distribution
favorite
is way
part.
Okay, so you see these two curves.
Once physicality
Wait
does,
a minute. Wait. I just cited what the Air Force study, the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport, which, by the way, is the equivalent of our U.S. Anti-Doping Association, USODA, USADA, I think it is. USODA is the United States Olympic Development Association that recruits kids to be on elite level teams. Anyway, they're the Anti-Doping Association. They're Canada's division of WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association. So what their remit is policing the use of banned substances in sport, including testosterone, which is a banned substance in sport, as a supplement, and anabolic steroids and that sort of thing. So this is an organization with a dog in the hunt. And that study was a study, as I said, of a review of the literature over the course of 10 years, from 2011 to 2021. Has Doug ever heard of it? No, send it to me. Okay. Are you aware of the fact that Leah's personal times went down over the course of time while she's still training and training as hard as she can and getting the kind of coaching that they want, while her teammates are basically saying, "You go, girl," while her friends are saying, let's do this, while one of her friends this year beat her record and set an Ivy League record in the same event. Do you know any of that? No, I don't know that. That's and that is your go-to demonstration. All the while, you ignore the fact that from 2004 to 2020, when trans women were allowed to compete at the elite level in both the NCAA and in world athletics and in sports that are governed by other world federations at the Olympic Games, only one trans woman ever made a national team over the course of 16 years. That's Laurel Hubbard. She was weightlifting. She was on the New Zealand weightlifting squad, and she was far from the podium. So you're picking out a successful trans woman athlete's successful winning performance in one event and saying that trans women will destroy women's sport, when there are years of examples to pick from. And one person winning one event is enough to say, oh, can't do that. In other words, basically, it's Doug believes that trans women shouldn't compete because of his a prioris, that all women are less competent in physical fitness than men are. But essentially, if you take that position, as some people who are very supportive of trans people will take the position, I'm with you until it comes to sport, and then I drop you. Because in sport, you are a man still. And again, it's always about women. There are several people out there that are very disappointing when it comes to that, despite the evidence that of the dog that didn't bark. There are no barking dogs in this game. There aren't, if you look at so in those 16 years, you would probably, if trans people are 2% of the population, you'd expect to see more than one make a national team since they're eligible, but only one did. So you want to look at scoreboard and tell me where the panic lies. People bring up Caitlyn Jenner. Well, Caitlyn Jenner was most famously competing in a women's golf tournament. And that's her own hypocrisy showing through. I mean, yeah. And when we got into the conversation about the WNBA, it's like, I think that comes up, but it's just, Jesus. It's like, can NBA All-Star decide tomorrow that he's a woman and then compete in the WNBA? Of course not. I mean, all of these, I don't know. You've got enough red herrings to put on a hell of a fish fry, mate.
This is why I'm against women in all sports. Oh, sorry, trans women.
Yes, you are. That was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
What is different about sport?
I'm showing you why. So here we got the distribution of size and strength, speed, all that sort of thing for women. Here's the distribution for men. Okay, so this would be average or median. These would be like the slower, fatter women who can't do sports. These would be the slower, fatter
the ugly ones
that can't do sports as well.
And
these down here, this curve down here, this would be
the ones that shouldn't be spokespeople.
Here. So
it's another tip of his.
Some elite women can beat the slower, fatter men. We eat Doritos and play Mario Kart.
In what sport, Doug?
In just general sports that require speed and strength. Okay. So here's my point. This is why I'm against all women in competitive type sports. Is because you can be a
competitive type sports that require speed and strength, right?
Right. Well, to me, like poker's not a sport.
Okay. Is skeet shooting a sport?
I don't know. Do they run and then shoot, or they just sit and shoot?
They just pull. As far as my understanding.
I don't consider that a real sport. Anyhow,
it's an Olympic sport.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
And a woman won gold in mixed.
You see this? Yeah, I know. But that's the point. The guy's basically saying trans women shouldn't compete in sport, right? At all. and he's making and the reason is that men will always be better than women in a sport that requires speed and strength, but he doesn't leave it at sports that require speed and strength. I mean, World Athletics has made the determination that trans women shouldn't compete in track and field. Only recently, and the only reason they did it was because of this political thing. They wanted their current limit for testosterone levels was 5 nanomoles per liter. They wanted to cut it in half to 2.5. But one of the people that serves on the governing board, I don't know, I got away with it, but in a press conference basically said, we wanted to do that, but there wasn't the appetite for that. There wasn't the appetite for that because it's become this hot button issue of people in the general public basically saying, we won't tolerate it, we don't like it, men are better than women, and trans women are men. That's the way that's the logic of this argumentation, as you'll see. And the logic of the argumentation is as strong and as fundamental as this self-drawn little humpy graph that Doug, got out his crayon box and drew.
It's competition.
It seems like you don't want me to get through this, but
No, I just think you're. Well, go ahead. You get through it.
okay. So this is
Talk
why
to
I'm
people.
against.
This is why you're missing nuance. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay. This is why people like Leah Thomas, who basically was probably around here. My curves are not perfect, but Leah Thomas was basically in here somewhere when it comes to, let's say, competitive swimming. Good, but not that great.
Well, you don't show what the
don't have
downside
Leah's
is. She's
numbers on
probably
your
more
graph,
on the
though.
downside
Yeah, you're right,
of
there's
the
no
thing
numbers on
because
the
she's
graph.
not
And so
fat
you
and
can be
eating
like,
And you're talking
Doritos
generalities,
ever.
and you're talking men to women, not
Can I try to get this
people
out?
who are trans.
So the point is, you can be, let's say, let's say,
I think I'm giving you plenty of time.
so in competitive swimming at college level, let's say you can be like the top, let's say 40 percentile, 40% of the guys.
Did you
in
listen to a
college
single
swimming,
thing
top
I
40
said?
percentile.
No.
And you have these abilities. You can actually get rid of a lot of testosterone, go through 2
Doesn't
years of
care.
whatever, go into competitive women's sports and be the top 10 percentile. This is why it's unfair, because men are so superior to women in sports when it comes to strength, speed, agility, that even, and Stephanie, that even predates puberty.
Scott, I did notice
You
that
can
he made him
actually
look
see
like
these
boobs.
differences in 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds. So that tells you something. It tells you that puberty doesn't account for all of it. So even if you do puberty blockers, even if you try all this stuff, there is still an inherent difference between biological men and biological women. This is why I'm against all trans women in women's sports. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree completely because
Why?
you're not talking because first of all, you're not talking about. I don't know where your comparisons are coming from, and the degree of difference in younger children as opposed to performance advantages conferred by going through a male puberty, whether it's later in life as a natal female transitioning to male, and there's I think there's
From
an awful lot
pre-puberty,
more
there's
complexity.
differences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree with that or disagree?
Of course.
Of course.
And
what,
there's
agree?
and those
Wait, do you
pubertal
agree or disagree? There's
differences.
differences but pre-puberty.
I just agreed, Doug.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you
said
said
yes.
of course. So
Yes.
what explains
Of course, sort of means it conveys the notion of agreement. Wouldn't you agree?
that? Okay. What do you think explains that?
You said okay. Did you agree or not?
I agree. What do you think
I
explains
hate
that?
to be an asshole, but Jesus Christ, you're going to
I
be that
think that
nitpicky.
the steroidal advantages conveyed by testosterone builds muscle, builds muscle,
Are the hormone
lowers
difference-
fat, changes
Also,
fat
Are the hormone differences that
increases
between boys and girls?
oxygen carrying
Okay. Do you think
capacity.
that-
of
well,
your bloodstream.
there are some, obviously not as great.
There are tons
as,
of things that
not as great
Doug's not
as
going to
are
listen to
conveyed
the actual
in
medicine
puberty
involved
for
in
most,
this.
Okay.
Not all people. When I was 12 years old, I think I've told you this before. I told my mom I was a girl when I was 3.
Said I'm not
This is
really.
kind of thing.
I'm not really interested in your personal stories at this point.
Well, fine.
and
That's great. That means
So
you're not
where we
interested in me as a
disagree-
person a little bit, Doug, doesn't it?
So where we disagree is you still think
We are so small a percentage of the population, and our stories don't get told. And most of this discourse takes place in our absence.
This is,
Okay.
in fact, the.
Let's talk about that. Let's say let me segue it to this topic. I just said I'm against all trans women in women's sports, and you just
All
said
women's sports.
yeah, and
All women's sports.
yeah, I'm against trans women in all women's sports. What's the downside of that? What's wrong with that?
It goes. First of all, it's contrary to the principles of the Olympic Charter. It
True.
is basically saying it's basically saying this is a field of human activity. There's a natural field of human activity that one is excluded from on the basis of your
Why is it wrong?
status.
Why is it bad to exclude trans women from women's sports? Oh,
I
you-
think each sport is
okay.
different. I mean, I don't think I think that you need to you want to exclude trans women from skeet shooting.
No, just women's skeet shooting. Oh, sorry, yeah, women's skeet shooting.
Well, it didn't used to be a women's division. Didn't used to exist
I know.
until a woman won, and then it was segregated. So now you're basically saying that the people that she beat, if they decided to
Why is it bad to
transition,
exclude trans women from all women's sports?
because not all sports are the same, and not all women are the same, and not all trans women are
I know,
the same.
but I let's say I'm a dictator of the world, and I said I agree with you. Yeah, not all sports.
That's
are
what
the
you
same.
want to be. You see, Doug. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
So and I
You want to
agree.
make that decision.
I still haven't heard an
for every-
answer. Why is it bad?
It's bad because it's fundamentally restricting a category of people.
Yes, but
For
why is that bad?
arbitrary reasons. For arbitrary reasons.
That's not arbitrary. It's based on
It's not
sex.
arbitrary in your mind, but it sure as hell is arbitrary in your mind. It's not arbitrary.
Do you think?
But you're taking upon yourself the ability to make those decisions for world federations of sport who have considerations of their own to think of, which is to say, the people who are competitors, the people who are paying for the game, the people who are doing this, and some sports federations have come to the conclusion that you have.
So if I said, as a dictator of the world, no trans women, if you're born with a penis, you can't compete against women. Why is that bad?
Pause. the tape. Did you notice how Doug has now gone back to the argument, and my earphones are about to die, so I better get myself prepared to switch it up. Doug's just gone and made the argument that if you were born with a penis, you should be excluded from women's sport. Now, earlier on, it was gametes. Earlier on, it was chromosomes. Earlier on, it was a whole bunch of stuff. And now, it's penis. Now we're back to dick. So all of that posturing, all of that biology stuff basically boils down to your dick. I swear to God, these people are just really concerned about their groin being attacked.
And let's say that's my
I
arbitrary
don't
reason.
know, aside from dick waving contests, I don't know of any competitions that involve the particular use
That's not the
of
question I
that
asked
member.
you. I asked you if I.
Yes, it was literally the question you asked me.
Why
You
is it
said
bad?
if
Is
you're
my
born with a penis,
question. Why
right.
would that
So
be bad to make that division?
you're basically defining that physical aspect of a person as carrying some greater import, conveying some sort of athletic advantage when you have no data whatsoever to support
Okay,
that.
Stephanie, let's say I told you I have no data to support this, but I, as dictator of the world, saying if you're born with a penis, you play in men's sports. If you're not born with a penis, you play in women's
And you're
sports.
fucking
Question is,
asshole.
Why is that bad?
Oh, wait. Because
I
it's
did say
ridiculous.
that. I'm sorry,
It's
Doug.
ridiculous.
I apologize.
Well, why are
I
you making
actually
that
like
ridiculous
you,
assumption?
but
Let's say I'm a ridiculous
What
person.
athletic
you
advantage does a dick convey?
just being,
That you're a male with certain chromosomes.
Which is the a priori assumption that all men are going to be better than any given woman any day of the week.
No, would you admit that?
Which is the complete opposite of what competition is,
Oh.
or what fairness is.
Look at him.
You need to
You know,
provide
it's
some sort of evidence that
who's being
simply by virtue of
sincere in
having a
this
dick
argument?
or something that looks like a dick, but
being
is in
sincere?
but
Who's
when-
laughing his
Sure,
ass
sure.
off?
Let me ask you this.
Call it male.
Let's
He's
say I, as a
having
dictator,
fun.
made
His
that very
audience is
arbitrary,
having fun
ridiculous,
too, because I don't
mm-hmm.
sit in a ladylike fashion.
I'd be rooting for the revolution, Doug.
And then I add this piece of information. Every trans woman, after hearing this rule, said, "I'm totally fine with it. I'm not sad about it." Would you still say it's ridiculous?
I would say it's ridiculous from the point of view of if you achieve unanimity, I suppose.
Nobody.
that'd be
What
fine.
I'm saying is
There's
nobody's
always-
hurt by it.
Yeah, well, this is kind of if fishes could climb trees, they'd be Tarzan. I don't see. I think it's. I don't know how.
What I'm getting at is, I think the real reason why you would push back against what I'm saying is, if I add in, I'm making this arbitrary rule. If you're born with a penis, you play men's sports. If you're not born with a penis, you play women's sports. There's going to be intersex, granted, but if I just make this arbitrary,
Now we're down to
ridiculous
penises
rule,
again. He's leaning into the
if I make
dick.
this- they play men's sports if you intersex. So if I make these arbitrary, ridiculous rules,
What's up with that?
and I add in the piece of
You're not a
information
very
in this,
ridiculous person.
and then I add this in to the hypothetical that no one's hurt by it, all the trans people, women say that's fine. Would you have a problem?
Yeah,
with it?
you can make that. Yeah, I would actually, because I wouldn't be.
Oh, but if
among
you
those
have a
who say,
hoo-ha, well,
think it is.
I mean, hey, come on and join
Because I
the
would be-
boys.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Why would you be hurt by it?
because my teammates would lose a valuable member of the team, and because in my sport there is no advantage to having a guy on the boat.
Okay, so you can't be replaced by a guy or a woman?
I'm sure I could, but you said no one. What am I, chopped liver?
So yeah, you would not be able to compete against women.
Yeah. Or with women. You see,
And
it's a team
you're saying you would
sport.
be hurt by it.
People like to play with their friends.
because you couldn't play with your friends. That would make you hurt.
Yeah, I know it sounds immature, particularly at the age of 70. It does, but
No, I can understand that. You want to play with your friends. I understand that. Okay.
no one would be hurt by it, except for Stephanie. She doesn't count.
No, you count.
Yeah, well, not in your scenario. I don't.
Well, you could play with.
What could I do, Doug?
Play with friends on the men's team. You have male friends, don't you? No.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, if there's
I mean,
not
most of the people that pay me are guys.
so what would be if you got male friends?
I am that kind of whore. What?
If you have male friends who do boating, why couldn't you play with those friends?
Do you think that people ought to have a little bit of freedom of association and choice? including my friends who want me to say.
I do. But when it comes to sports, I don't want to see LeBron James play for the WNBA.
And you won't.
Here we go. LeBron James.
You won't see LeBron James play for the WNBA, and that's because no one changes their goddamn sex or gender to win a pickle dish.
Well, hang on. Whoa, this is good. I like this. Are you saying LeBron James would never play in the WNBA?
Not without going through a good deal of
a good deal
alterations.
Of
what? Alterations.
Like, do you think if LeBron James sincerely said tomorrow?
Do you think LeBron James? Do you think? Look, let me ask you this: do you think LeBron James would maintain every advantage?
No. Okay, I'll grant you that.
And also, I just want to point out scoreboard here. In the 20 years, or 16 years from 2020 to 2000,
bump this up a little bit.
Yeah, because LeBron James isn't going to undergo HRT. He's not trans, and he's not going to do that.
How do you know?
If he did,
how do you know he's not trans?
If he did, I'd be shocked. If he did, I'd be shocked. But
you don't know he's not trans.
I'd be absolutely confident in my belief that the reason his playing in the WNBA wouldn't have been a goal of transition. Winning that pickle dish, winning that championship isn't a goal of transition.
I know. I'm just saying. Okay, thanks for coming on, Stephen. I got 2 other people waiting for a long time.
Great talk.
Did we talk about 50-50? I think so. Is it close? So. Yeah, that's fair. Tell the transatlantic people to learn from us.
Tell you what, call in on the 31st of August. I'll be there.
You're the host?
I'm
Who's your co-host that day?
Arden.
Oh, Arden hates me though, right?
Yeah, that's all right.
Is it true? Like, if she were here, or if you guys were talking privately, and you asked Arden, "Do you hate Pinecreek?" What would she say?
No, she wouldn't say she hated you. She just said she hated the argument. Hated the arguments, which is fine.
Oh yeah,
I try to take a as measured approach to these things as possible.
Yeah, I actually appreciate you the most out of all the crew there. In fact, the only reason why I went there in the first place was because of you, Stephanie. That's the truth. You invited me.
I suckered you into that because now you're on this fucking.
Yeah. No, it's a dopamine rush. So I owe it all to you. But thanks for coming on.
Bye.
See ya.
So there we have it, Judge Poop. I don't know. It's so frustrating. It's you make these arguments, and eventually, at the end of the day, you just wind up with somebody waving their dick around. Literally, I mean, literally. Actually, not literally, but clearly, it comes down to dick. You're born with a dick, you can't play in women's sports. Like, well, did other accoutrements go along with the dick, or was it possibly an enlarged clitoris? I don't know. You tell me, Dick. You tell me. Ask an obstetrician who delivers a child and makes the call. Well, is that a clit or is that a dick? I'm really not sure, But, it's just so stupid. The whole thing is stupid, and it doesn't matter to him. It doesn't. The only thing that matters to him, the only reason he's engaging in this colloquy, that's the only people getting hurt by this are women, both trans and cis. The only cis people, the only people who've been kicked out of competition, aside from the East German team that was doping in the 70s, have been cis women. Two Southern African runners couldn't compete in Tokyo on account of the fact that they had T levels in excess of 5 nanomoles per liter. Now, if you're unfamiliar with, I could look up my. Let me just see if I've got. I can't see if I've got that handy. I've got it over here somewhere. Fuck me, it's like, jeez. In the United States, we don't measure T levels that way. Hold where are my fucking glasses? I can't see a thing. T metabolics, CBD. Lipids. Is it on here somewhere? Let's place it. I don't know.
I believe, I can't seem to, for some reason or another, I don't have that particular page handy, but my recollection is my T levels in February were in the neighborhood of decimal 2-ish. I think it was decimal 2, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it's measured in nanogram in nanograms per deciliter or something. Not nanograms, but I don't know, milligrams per deciliter or something like that. But you do the conversion, and my T range is very, very low, and the average. Well, it's actually average for a woman my age, but and the average for women is significantly below 5 nanograms, uh, 5 nanograms per liter, 5 nanomoles. I'm sorry, 5 nanomoles per liter. But anyway, the only people who've been kicked out of or not allowed to compete, at least in the last Olympic Games, were 2 cis women from Southern Africa whose testosterone levels were higher than normal, in excess of 5 nanomoles per liter. So who's getting hurt here? I mean, it's not trans women that are getting hurt. You slap, no matter where you draw the line there. It can be problematic. And they're XY, right? No, they were not. Their karyotype was not. The reason for that was not because of a genetic. Well, everything's genetic. It's hard to really. This is how hard it is. But the naturally occurring testosterone in their bloodstream was higher than usual, and there are variations. There are a number of male athletes whose T levels actually fall into the female range. So it's really, really hard. It's sex is biological. I won't say it isn't, but it's also a cluster of characteristics that tend to be predictive of the cultural markers of masculinity and femininity that we use to describe human beings. Not strictly linguistic, but it's not strictly, it's not strictly scientific. And what Doug has with his little Humpty Doos there is the medical data that he has stored up in his cranium that eventually makes its way to both his rear quarters and apparently his fingers. And this is why I go on these. This is why I take the time to go on and argue this stuff, because nobody ever hears from anyone like me. There aren't that many that have had the experience of going through, well, what do I need to do in order to compete? What do I need to do? What are the qualifications? If you're entering a competition, you have to follow the rules. So you need to know what the rules are. You shift the goalposts, and all of a sudden you don't qualify. And Doug wants to be the dictator of the world and set the rules according to information that he has developed for himself to reinforce his own predilections for category M, category F. And he doesn't make room for any variation. That's why I'm also a little bit uncomfortable with people saying nobody's saying that. Well, Nobody's saying that sex isn't real. Nobody is saying that sex isn't real. That's a bogus argument. But sex is a lot more complicated than simple X's, simple Y's, small, large gametes. And at the end of the day, even though you're making these arguments all over the place that it's X's and Y's and gamete size and all of this other stuff that Doug obviously knows plays very well in the discourse and quotes endlessly. In the end, at the end of the day, at the end of this conversation, it comes down to your dick. Yeah, in one of Matt Walsh's videos, it's like he asked somebody he asked a guy, how do you know you're a guy? And the guy goes, because I have a dick. It's just that simple, but it's not that simple. Because you haven't thought about it. You haven't thought about the possibility that anyone could question their gender and their sex to the level that not addressing the profound discomfort that they feel in either the role or the physicality. And there's a cure for that. It's called, it's very successful. The regret rates for gender affirming either hormone therapy, surgery, a whole bunch of stuff. The regret rates are extremely low for the people that do face these issues in a profoundly personal way that, quite frankly, is none of Doug's business. He hasn't seen female athletes except when they win, or except when they decide to engage him because he brought it up. And not a bunch of us have the stomach, inclination, or desire to engage on the topic. I certainly didn't until people were trying to pass regulations, legislation, etc., that profoundly impact the way trans people are ever going to be able to live their lives with some degree of peace. I wish I could convey that to in some way, shape, or form. But I don't suppose that's ever going to happen. All that said, any of you guys who can, please address the topic when it comes up in a compassionate sort of way. Answer, that's a good question, and I have a lot of thoughts on that. Having been engaged in both as a competitor and as an official and as an educator within the sport of sailing. I'll just speak to that, okay? Because I can't speak to track or any other sport, and we're talking about that world. I think I touched on this a little bit, but maybe this is a good opportunity to expand a little bit more on the whole idea. As I said earlier, there are tons of endeavors where co-ed participation is not only great but almost the norm.
in the sport of sailing, as in most competitive endeavors, for most of my life anyway, there's this a priori assumption of uh, men more competitive, men uh, better better athletic, better physical tone. Notice I say better, um, etc., which are all assumptions that I don't think are correct, but it's culturally enough reinforced that a lot of girls, and I see this, teaching sailing to little kids, a lot of girls just don't think they can have it. They have it. And a lot of little girls are really good. Sailing takes an awful lot of concentration. It doesn't, depending on the equipment, it might be more suited to a male or a body like size, you know. There's a reason that the women's dinghy is sailed in laser radials, which have a smaller sail plan, exactly the same hull. It's women's solo dinghy. That's so you're sailing by yourself. There's a reason why why the women's dinghy is the laser radial, smaller sail plan, less force. Don't need to be as heavy. And the men's is the laser, larger sail plan, exact same hull, etc., and so forth. But to be competitive in a laser, in the bigger boat, your weight needs to be around, you need to be pretty well toned. You can't be too much over 200 pounds or you're too heavy for the boat. But really ideal weights, like I would say like 170 to 190, somewhere in there. And the laser radial, it's like 125-ish to 145-ish. Anything over 145, you're just going to be slow. So I know a lot of female athletes who can't sail a fucking laser radial, can't compete in that. It just physically can't do it because they're too big. Really good sailors, but they're too big. Again, sailing is an equipment dependent sport, so there are different considerations, which is difficult to get through to guys like Doug, who basically say trainswomen need to be wiped off the board entirely. But as to women's athletics, I think it's important mostly because of cultural reasons, especially in a sport like sailing, where you do have, if you're a girl or woman, you are physically capable enough, you're mentally capable enough with good training, you're intellectually capable enough to understand the nature of the game to be able to compete well. And a lot of girls are not told they'll ever have that capacity. And to me, that's having a space where young girls and women can be shown that they do have that capacity and that they're competing within a realm of where no assumptions are being made as to whether they can or should be able to compete, is thrown into question because of a priori assumptions as to who's going to win. And that's why we've seen a huge growth in the number of women who are competing in the sport overall, not just in women's events, but overall, who are very, very good. And in fact, in some cases, in the case of the Stanford collegiate sailing team at the U.S. Nationals at Kings Point this year, the Stanford sailing team was I think there were 12 sailors on the team, and 9 of them were women. And the teams that they were sailed this event, the collegiate team race, not team racing, both actually, yeah, both team racing. No, wait a minute, Harvard, I think won one team racing, and in team racing, there was one women's. Both of the sailors were women, and I think they came in second. In fleet racing, Stanford won the event by a bunch, and the skipper and crew on both the boats in both divisions, A division, B division, were both young women, which made my heart sing. And that's because of a determined effort on the part of U.S. sailing, of ICSA, Intercollegiate Sailing Association, to expand the diversity of the sport. Gender, as far as gender is concerned, as far as race is concerned, as far as race and ethnicity are concerned, a really determined effort to say you can do this. I think that's very important, and that's why I think that women's sport is very important. I think seeing the World Cup that's going on right now, the U.S. women's national soccer team, is inspirational to young women and women, saying, hey, we can excel. And I guess that only matters to people who really care about sport. And I guess most people just simply don't, and will tell you they don't. And so this argument is not about sport. It's not about fairness. It's not about anything other than a priori assumptions about men's roles, women's roles, men and women and their differences. And yes, there are physical differences. I had to relearn how to do what I do on a boat because of the physiological changes that were quite real in the process of medical transition. Fat distribution changes. Upper body strength drops off the map comparatively. So those tasks that required brute strength, I learned that they don't really require brute strength. What they really require is efficiency and choreography and learning how to do it a little bit differently, because everything is different. I used to be pretty good. I got a lot better. But the reason I got better was because I didn't feel encumbered by having to be somebody I wasn't. It was mental rather than I got better at playing the game. And I played it, the physical activity of crewing or driving or something was very different. But I got better at playing the game because I wasn't locked in my own head. I don't know if any of that makes any sense to you guys. Anywho, I guess I'll wrap this up. if Beck's still in the chat, Beck is yeah, that's exactly right. The same difference. Andrew. It's a different physicality. You learn how to dance again. Beck's starting up his channel again, I guess, and he's going to go live at, I believe, 8:00, and I hope to be over there and say hey. I really appreciate all you guys who've hung out this long. Christ, how long's it been? Yeah, I should get this idiot off my screen, Jim. I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize. 7:00. Well, yeah. Well, I'm in the Eastern time zone. Whatever. 8:00 Eastern, I think, which is in a little under 18 minutes. So I've been at this for an hour and 40. I'm talking about old Dougie. But I know I wonder if he'll call in on the 31st of August. Let's see. And if I'm there, I don't mind talking to him. But he just I'm not sure he really appreciates how it's I think Uncle Bobby was addressing this earlier. It's like a lot of conservatives basically think if I talk calmly and rationally and never lose my cool, but stick in a little thing every now and again just to see if I can get my opponent riled up or my interlocutor riled up. It's kind of a tip, which is why I called him out on that. So I was going, well, you drain the body of testosterone. That's not how it works. And you just use that kind of thing as a thing. And I think that's why he brought up that, well, you got a penis. Like, come on, man. It ain't a dick waving contest. You got your schlong bouncing around down there. It's not going to help you run faster if you don't have other things attached to it. What produce the testosterone, what create all the physiological changes that you're talking about. And it's, this rush to deny that there are any. I'll just talk about one in particular. I mean, a lot of people talk about, well, you go through a male puberty, you get a larger bone structure and all of this, and there are things that are reversible. Well, first of all, when you're talking about that, and you're talking about trans children, and you're talking about all of this stuff, part of the evaluation process for a trans child is to find out, are they really trans? To what degree is that dysphoria enough to provide a solution to some of the problems? Because if you do go through a male puberty and you don't feel yourself to be male, you wind up with some characteristics that are very difficult to undo in transition, depending on the level of masculinization that one undergoes for one's own internal hormonal structure. But anyway, that's sort of a side issue. But one of the most profound and dramatic things that happens in HRT, and very quickly, is a change in hematocrit levels. So if you've gone through a male puberty, let's just say you've gone through a male puberty, we'll do the transition in that direction from testosterone based bloodstream to an estrogen based, the primary sex hormone in your bloodstream is estrogen as opposed to testosterone, and vice versa. You go through that, if your genetics is such that you do have larger lungs, and that's reinforced by testosterone, or your frame is larger because of the way your bone density is greater or lesser, and some of that changes with HRT, but primarily not not too dramatically, but does change. Fat distribution changes. But the thing that happens really, really quickly is um, the thing that happens really, really quickly is a change in hematocrit levels. The iron shit that's stuck to you that are part of your are red blood corpuscles, which by the way don't have any DNA in them. Well, they don't have XY chromosomes in them. Anywho, measurably within 6 months of testosterone suppression and estrogen and administration, hematocrit levels in born assigned male at birth, testosterone based life form, human life form, drop to typical female levels, which means your bloodstream doesn't have the same kind of oxygen carrying capacity as it did prior to. So even if you have a bigger heart, even if you have bigger lungs, even if you have that, the oxygen's not getting to your muscles quite so efficiently. That's where the process begins, as to not having Popeye arms, not having that sort of stuff going on. It happens very, very quickly, and it's real. It's not fake, and it's biological. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the way your body, which is an entire again, just like sex, your body is a system. It's not just one thing. It's a whole cluster of things. But that surely affects athletic performance, or or one's physical experience of the world. But does Pinecreek have the patience to work through that? No. Does he have the patience to work through a study? No. Does he have the patience to examine Leah Thomas's pre and post times? No. Does he do any of these people? No. Because they're starting from that a priori assumption. Dick, better. Hoo-ha, not so much. I mean, anyway, let's go over or get ready for the Beckmeister. And thank you all for coming again. I really appreciate all of the support you've given. I've got the links to my Linktree and Ko-Fi are in the description, as well as links to all of the papers and studies and etc. that are referenced here. And say thanks so much. We'll see you over at the Beckmeisters. Ciao.